Welcome to the Connected Teamwork Podcast by Growth Leaders Network. How do we learn to truly thrive together? How do we stay connected to our authentic selves, each other, and our purpose as a team, especially when challenged? How do we unlock the deeper levels of group intelligence? Enjoy this episode of the Connected Teamwork Podcast and learn practical tools to evolve the connectedness of your team to its next level.
Well, welcome to Connected Teamwork Podcast, episode 72, where we help leaders and teams connect more deeply to their team's intelligence. I'm your host, Hilke Faber. I'm here together with my other host, Carson Eddy. Carson, how are you today?
Hilke, I always look forward to my time with you. I'm well. How about yourself?
I am well, and I'm really looking forward to diving into team connectedness practice number 11. Give your best and be resourceful, especially when that's hard. And I will introduce this topic a little bit. It's the practice towards the end of the 12 practices. And so we can do all of these things, right? We can become more grounded, focusing on what we can control. We can become more authentic, more respectful, more humble, deeper listening, all these things. And yet there's no recipe for life and leadership. Life happens and we are asked to respond to it. So how can we give our best and be resourceful? So to get into that conversation, and as you're listening, I ask you to think about these questions yourself. Like, what happens when we are not resourceful? When a challenge hits us and we are not resourceful? And I'll give you an example. This morning, I got up early and did my practices and then opened my calendar and my email, and I saw that I was never going to get everything done that I need to get done by noon of the time that I need to get things done. And my not at my best self wanted to become angry at something, made an assumption that this was going to be unmanageable, that therefore the rest of the day was going to be a bad day. And I noticed all of this, like almost like a shade in my mind went like down. That was the bad news. The good news was that I noticed and I pressed pause, and I asked myself, "What's the limiting story? What am I telling myself?" Like, okay, well, what would I be without all this gunk? And what am I grateful for? It's like, wow, I get to do this really beautiful work of connectedness, of coaching people, of writing. I had a conversation with my parents this morning. All of that happens. And what a difference a little bit of attitude makes. So, Carson, tell us about what happens with you when you disconnect from your resourcefulness, and how do you recover?
I love that example, Hilke. And when I think about giving my best and being resourceful, I think about the choices that we have on a daily basis. You talked about the choice of mindset and gratitude. I think about times that I've had to summon energy or creativity or grit on days that, I didn't even want to get out of bed, or when I was dealing with personal tragedy or professional rejection or the constant pressures to deliver. And it's critical that we can unplug from that feeling or that inclination to react in those times, because anytime that we're feeling stuck or like this can't be solved, it's that when we accept no or as a final outcome, or that something can't be done, or we become overwhelmed with our set of circumstances for whatever reasons, right, wrong, or indifferent, it causes panic in that kind of day-to-day minutia, or the pile on of stressors or things added to our plate. But as you pointed out, as we separate from that And we can go back to what we've talked about before, the balcony view, and look at what is mission critical. What of the balls are in the air? Which ones are glass and which ones are rubber that can bounce? What do I have to focus on today? And great, in the grand scheme of things, like what are the most important relationships that I need to invest in today? Or what are my daily non-negotiables? Those types of things can help you go from being stuck to what are the possibilities for today. I think about that very regularly as I help my team navigate through ambiguous situations where there's a lot of noise. We run, sometimes very low in the way of resources because we work in a part of the organization where, the investment that we capture is reinvested into how we invest in the nonprofit sector. And so we run resource scarce sometimes. And so we have to be very scrappy and resourceful in order to deliver the outcomes that are expected of us. And so I think the key element is, instead of thinking, hey, this can't be done, or hey, this is a problem, reframe that problem as possibilities.
I see you really stepping out of whatever mind stream you are, and then say, hey, are these glass balls? Are these rubber balls? No, which ones do I really need to catch, and which ones can I flexibly work with? I also think about the things that are within my control and that are outside of my control. My list of to-dos of things that I can't control always is growing, because I have frustrations or resentments or whatever is going on. And when I really clean my list and saying, what is really mine to do right now? What is that right now? That clarifies. Also, what helps me is to balance that view with, okay, so how do I take care of what I need to do? How do I take care of the people around me? And how do I take care of Hilka? So just for this podcast, I took my morning walk. I almost skipped it. Yeah, I don't have time, but no, I'm going to take my morning walk, because I know what it does to my mindset. I know how it is for my body. And it's equally important. And it's interesting that when we are in tune, something in us knows that. Like we are buzzing in a way. It's like, no, I'm taking care. It feels like I'm in some kind of flow. Whereas when I'm not doing that, it becomes drudgery. So, Carson, you are a man that you do so much. Like you are you manage so many people. You manage lots of objectives and things. How do you not get lost in the daily? And I heard the word constant demand to perform. How do you do it?
It is not there's not a set blueprint and roadmap. We have to be very agile, and you can't be rigid and transfixed on things having to be a certain way. I mean, you made the point earlier that, things are constantly in flux, and, we never know exactly the set of circumstances that we're going to be dealt. Sometimes we have to recalibrate regularly. And, I look at it very similar to sports. You may, if you're a football coach, you may strategize and plan your plays and how you envision the first quarter, the second quarter, playing out. But as things happen in real time, as turnovers transpire or unforeseen injuries, you have to very quickly recalibrate and look at what does the current playing field look like, and what is going to be my strategy now with the current set of circumstances. Things are going to change. Now, every morning, I have to conjure up my daily non-negotiables, and I'll apply what I like to call now ruthless discipline to my schedule. I love that you highlighted that you've got to take care of Hilka, because, often we've got to make sure we prioritize ourselves. Other people are not going to be thinking about us in the same way that we can prioritize ourselves and show ourselves that self-care. I know that I have to give myself the space to get exercise. I know that I have to give myself that space to read or listen to a podcast or do something that separates myself from that grind, because it helps me stay fresh and come up with new ideas. And frankly, sometimes in silence, I come up with the breakthrough, the way through. Because I don't have that constant onslaught of information, firing away at me. So how do I do it? I do it by taking a step back, looking at the day, looking at the week. We're here on a Monday, and I can look at my week and I can plan ahead, and I can say, okay, is this call or conversation today mission critical, or can it wait? And what is mission critical? What are the key things that I have to deliver and do for my team, mostly for my sphere? I've got to listen, and I've got to stay at the pulse. I've got to stay at the pulse of what matters to all the people that I want to matter to. And for me, that's my wife, my kids, but it's also my boss, my team, and my customers. And if that sphere is telling me something, then I've got to address that first and foremost. And a lot of the other stuff can likely move. And we have to prioritize our lives that way, but we also have to prioritize ourselves. And so making sure that I'm giving myself that space. I may take a meeting on the treadmill, and nobody can see me on that meeting, but I'm there, focusing on my own, my well-being, and giving myself the energy to get through that day, breaking up the day, taking a call outside, or whatever that may look like. And so that is how I focus on cutting through the noise, but also maintaining focus on the things that matter most.
I like that idea of staying focused, like ruthless discipline on schedule, and also the sphere. And so if you're listening, think about what your sphere is. What is your relevant sphere? Not the whole, like you might be sensitive to the whole of the world. That's fine. And still, even in that, what is yours to do, right? So for you, it's your wife, your boss, your team, your customers, your children, yourself. All of that's part of your sphere. And so we can ask ourselves, what is my sphere? What is my sphere? That I'm my field of care. What am I here to take care of? Like, what is that? And when I look at it that way, as taking care of, as opposed to getting as done, it feels different, because it becomes like doing a task, checking off my to-do lists, or I'm here to really extend care, and the energy that comes online with that is very different. When I think about how am I going to care for my sphere, for my field of play, somehow the resources that I need show up. When I facilitate workshops or give keynotes or whatever, I'm often standing in front of lots and lots of people, and I do have a plan of what I'm going to say, even some slides or concepts, and yet we are together in a room. So my primary purpose needs to be of service to the group. And what I've noticed is the more I stay in that kind of service mindset, how can I be of service? The more it flows, because it's relevant to what's going on. And part of that is being open to the unplannable, right? There's so much that goes on in a day that, it's like, okay, I think, I knew this was going to happen, or I knew I was going to have this meeting, or like today, I know I was going to have this podcast with you. But there's so much that I don't know. Actually, there's much more in a day, if I'm really honest, problems, nuances, and things. If I'm really honest, that I don't know. So the question is, how do I stay sensitive to what I don't know? And also, how do I open myself to the resources I didn't know I had? I might think on Friday, I have all the perfect answers for Monday's meetings. But then on Monday, I have these meetings and something that's entirely different. So we're going to take a short break. After the break, I want to talk more about how do we resource for the unplannable. You're listening to the Connected Teamwork podcast, Team Connectedness Practice number 11. We're discussing giving your best, being resourceful. See you after the break.
You are listening to the Connected Teamwork Podcast by Growth Leaders Network. Do you want to learn more about building the next level of connectedness in your team? Please contact Growth Leaders Network on LinkedIn. And now, back to the show.
So we're talking about how to be resourceful, especially when we're faced with the unplannable. So Carson, tell us about how do you work with that?
You can do so much to build the foundation and, an infrastructure of success and support, which is mission critical to do. But inevitably, things are going to transpire that come completely out of left field. My organization works in the nonprofit sector, and a lot of these nonprofits are facing very distinct challenges. And you can't be tone deaf to what's transpiring if you're seeking to add value and support and serve a human population of any size. And so when these things pivot, I think that's when you lean more and more into your sphere. Because again, there's going to be a lot of noise, and the constant demands for results don't go away. But you also can't let them dictate you doing something that takes your steady hand off the wheel. At the end of the day, it's important that we're leaning in and we're at the pulse of what matters to the people that we want to matter to. And so, when I think about resourcefulness and I think about situations that are, seem unwinnable, or when my team brings me a problem statement, or, hey, this isn't working, or, I don't have line of sight to completing this project for this customer. It's important that we don't get lost in that moment, that we don't react to that. And frankly, we gain a lot of wisdom over time, learning from failure, learning from how we grappled with similar situations in the past. How did we bounce back? Let's really think about what is the core priority here. And being transparent with our customers, being transparent with our teams, with our leadership. I had a manager years ago who always just said, my biggest priority for you is don't ever let me be surprised. And, raising the flag when we need additional guidance or assistance, or making sure that people are aware of, what our teams are grappling with. Using every tool and relationship in your arsenal to make the best out of every situation is what I think about resourcefulness. And Hilke, I say this fully cognizant that I've grappled with a lot of things that I think a lot of people are grappling with right now, which is depression or burnout, or being rejected by a customer, or having something misfire, or somebody leaves. You have attrition. Somebody on your team leaves unexpectedly, and you've got to navigate through these uncertain waters and make sure the commitments don't slip through the cracks. I mean, these things happen regularly, and yet you still have to deliver outcomes. And at the end of it, it's everything that we've talked about up to this point. It is not getting lost in being reactionary, not getting lost in the emotions of the situation. Acknowledge the emotions, but emerge with a plan that involves, and sometimes I shrink my bubble down to the lowest common denominator. I make sure that I'm good and focused first, and then I expand my sphere based on the other people that need to be involved in the conversation. If it's a conversation that I need to have with my boss, or with a customer executive, or with somebody on my team, that's the conversation that needs to be had. And I will state what I know. I'll be very transparent and communicative, but I also listen. And I have to stay, fully aware of what is the challenge, what's at stake, what's at risk. And frankly, we may have to mitigate and come up with a plan to, limit the risk or limit the exposure or whatever it is. But, at the end of it, you've got to control what you can, but there are going to absolutely be things that you cannot control. So focus on the controllables. Don't obsess about what you can't change, but do recalibrate around the new playing field and the players.
Sounds brilliant. And what I'm hearing in that is also shrinking your bubble. So starting with yourself first, saying, okay, am I in a place where I need to be to deliver, and then engaging. What I'm also seeing in working with uncertainty is humility, which is my ego brain faced with anything thinks that it's life or death and I need to solve it now and I need to do it and right now. So it is very myopic, focused on me by myself in this moment. And that's three incorrect assumptions, right? So the first thing is it's all about me now, like me. Well, it's not all about me. Other people are probably facing the challenge. I'm not looking at it by myself. So then that gives a sense of what's my part in the orchestra, in the team, in the collective. I am not everything. One teacher, when I described to him why I was sitting here a week meditating while the world's burning, like ecologically, and he shot back and he said, "You must think you're very important." Boom, like one of those arrows right between the eyes. I'm like, yeah, right. But that comes from somewhere. So first thing is, I'm not experiencing this myself by myself. Now, the second thing is, and it's not just up to me to solve it. So I can ask for help. I can ask another perspective. And it doesn't have to be grandiose. I don't have to always set up a big meeting with the team or with a boss or with a partner. Sometimes it's simple as, okay, nudging my husband in this case. Hey, I'm sitting with this, or my friend, or even thinking about somebody who I consider to be wise and think about how would they approach this? And I find that little gives me like a lift. I have this coach that I talk to. She's about in her mid 80s. I talked to her for the last 20 years every Saturday, pretty much when I'm here. And I often think, like, what would Janelle think about this? And invariably, it's very different from the feverish brain that I'm in at that moment. It's like, oh, yeah, maybe ask a question, or what's really of service here? What's this really about? So I don't have to rush it. And then the third thing, so first is it's not just me experiencing. The second thing is ask for help. The third different story is, and it doesn't all have to be solved in this very minute, right? I'm asking myself, what is the span of time that I'm in? It's a bit paradoxical because we're also teaching and taught to be in the moment. But being in the moment is also to see eternity, to see how we're a part of something much, much, much bigger and longer. So I find when I work on a project with those eyes, I think Stephen Covey called that first things first, or like that helps me to marshal the resources that are appropriate for this moment, not overdo it.
I have a question for you, Hilke. So I think we've stressed the importance of being right with ourselves and coming to these new situations, being agile, and how we need to show up in these moments. Something that I've struggled with and that I've realized is that you can't ever control anyone else's priorities or mission critical. So often people are going to come to you and say, "Oh, Hilke, this has to be done right away. This is of dire importance." And when in the grand scheme of things, it's really not. I think one of the catch-22s of wisdom is, you start to realize what actually is of exceptional importance and what isn't. But yet sometimes people will still come to you like things are on fire and they're really not. Now, you can't tell them, this isn't really all that important. It's not as important as you're making it out to be, right? You've got to make sure that that person feels seen and heard. But at the same token, you've also got to maintain your priorities. How do you think we as leaders should help set the right expectations with those that come to us with these on fire, quote unquote, situations, but also like maintain our own and the priorities of those that we serve amidst all that noise?
I love it. So when people come with fire, they often are on fire themselves. And it's often their ego that's on fire. Not always. Often I find in big organizations, it's the CEO or the SVP somewhere said something and everybody's like, And then when you check back with the CEO, like, is that what you meant? Sometimes, yes, but
That
very
happens.
often, no, right? And yet, in that moment, you can't tell your boss, go find, go meditate for half an hour and talk to me again. You can't. I
That'd
mean,
be
maybe you
nice.
can, but
I
that
wish.
probably is not going to work for most people. So here's how I think about that. One is, like you said, be in total acceptance of what the other person is. You're not going to change what the other person is. Never will be able to do that. Never. You can't do that. You don't control it. So total acceptance. And so then, and at that moment, you receive what the other person's saying, and you create a way to go on the balcony and slow down the brain waves. The fast brain waves are all about multi-focus, multi blah blah blah, blah, like not very wise. Let's take a moment. It's almost like, let's take a look at this. Almost like take a walk together, even when you sit in the conference room. It's like, so Jim, I hear you say that this has to be done by this afternoon, otherwise all wheels are going to fall off. Is that correct? Yeah. So you just hold up the mirror. It's like, okay, so can you tell me more about that? So you slow down, whatever questions you need to ask, just to get a sense of what Jim's seeing, right? And then you say, well, Jim, I'd like to, of course, I'd like to help you. At the same time, I also want to honor other commitments that I have. And maybe we can take a look at those together, because if we do this priority A by 5 o'clock this afternoon, that means that this and that will not, or will happen less. Help me make this prioritization. Something like that. Now,
Beautiful.
some people that are like on bomb fire, they're gone. And then, something, you just, do what you have to do, and you make your own prioritizations. Like, okay, well, I'm making a choice. I'm going to either disappoint this person and live with the consequences, or I'm going to make some reprioritization myself. But I'm going to make that choice. But I'm not going to do it thinking I didn't have a choice. I'm making a conscious choice. That to me is key.
I like that.
Carson, we're almost at the end of this episode. What would you say to a person who just feels totally overwhelmed at the moment?
First off, you're not alone. I think the key element is realizing that, a lot of the things that we do, and that the things that we see that are on fire, not all of it actually is. And as long as we are true to ourselves and those that we are prioritizing in our sphere, you'll emerge okay. I pin chats of my boss and my direct reports, and those are the ones I look at and go to first. And when things are frenetic and the demands seem very high and aggressive, I do consciously, physically take a step back. I will sit back, I'll walk around, and I'll go back to those priority relationships. What does my boss need me to get done today? What do I owe my team today? Those are the most important relationships in my work world. All these other things can be conceivably a rubber ball. I've got to look hard at the assumptions that I'm making that have me overwhelmed or that have me stuck in that moment. And then I think about the other paths to potentially succeeding where my team or I see us as stuck. I have a big affinity for Neil Patrick Harris's character, Barney Stinson in How I Met Your Mother. And he used to have this phrase, anytime something seemed insurmountable or impossible, he would always say, challenge accepted. And I've always tried to apply that lens to the things that other people say can't be done or are our biggest challenges or problems. And if you can take a look through the lens of what are the relationships or maybe the resources or the tools that are not being thought about or that are being underutilized, that could frankly be the key to the breakthrough, that is ultimately what delivers success. Don't look at things through the lens of what maybe everybody else looks at. I love, Hilke, your thought of, what would this other leader that I admire? Or, maybe you reach out to somebody who is a mentor or whom you highly, deeply respect and ask for their perspective. That is, sometimes when you're stuck in the thick of it, somebody else's vantage point that is not influenced by your own emotions can be, make all the difference in the world. But do everything you can to take that step back, get to that balcony view, and look at what are the priorities so that you can get away from your own assumptions. You don't need perfect conditions and you don't need perfect outcomes. That's why this episode is about giving your best. Use what you do have control over, and you do have control over your own mindset and your choices. Resourcefulness is going to create possibilities that you don't see right now.
So give your best, starting with yourself. Give it to yourself. Give your best, be of service. Make choices about what's yours and what's not. And remember that you have choices, and when you feel stuck, you have some choices about the story that you're accepting. Is it an insurmountable challenge, or is a challenge accepted? Thank you for listening to the Connected Teamwork Podcast, episode 72. I'm here with Carson Heddy. My name is Hilke Farber. See you next time at the Connected Teamwork Podcast. Thanks for listening. See you soon. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Connected Teamwork Podcast by Growth Leaders Network. Take a moment to reflect on what you learned today that can help build your team. Also, if you like, think about one of your team members and what you appreciate about them. Let them know. Enjoy connecting more deeply to what is great about them. And see you next time at the Connected Teamwork Podcast.